Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We begin with a political storm in New Delhi. It's over the India-US trade deal. What's in the fine print? Who is backing it? Who is opposing it? And why has this deal become a political flashpoint? We'll discuss all of it tonight. Also taking stock of the tech bloodbath. AI disruptions have hit India's IT sector, wiping out over $300 billion in market value. In West Asia, attacks before talks. The US shoots down an Iranian drone that came too close to its aircraft carrier. In India, 3 sisters die by suicide after being barred from online games. We look at the deadly gaming addiction and why we need stronger policies to tackle it. Plus, why Elon Musk's X and his AI tool Grok are facing a global crackdown. What Pakistan's defense minister has admitted about Balochistan and why people in the country are trolling their army chief. What talks between Saudi Arabia and Turkey mean for these countries and the region. Why HAL may not be part of India's stealth fighter program. What explains the rout in the cryptocurrency market with investors losing $500 billion, and what is second screen viewing? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Donald Trump finally cracks the whip on ICE. 700 immigration enforcement personnel are being removed from Minnesota. Border Czar Tom Homan made the announcement. He said the move would take effect immediately. This comes weeks after ICE agents fatally shot 2 protesters, sparking outrage and protests. The second round of peace talks to end the Ukraine war begin in Abu Dhabi. Negotiations are on between Russian, Ukrainian and American officials. The main sticking point is the issue of territory in eastern Ukraine. Moscow wants Kiev to pull its troops out of large parts of Donbass to end the nearly 4-year-long war. Vladimir Putin vows to act responsibly after Russia's nuclear pact with the US expires. Putin made the assurance during a phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The nuclear agreement is set to lapse tomorrow. It would release Moscow and Washington from restrictions on their nuclear arsenals. Gunmen kill at least 162 people in Nigeria's Kwara state. The attack on Tuesday came after military operations in the area to flush out terrorist elements. This is one of the deadliest attacks in Africa's most populous country in recent months. And the son of late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi is shot dead. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was killed in his home by masked assailants. Libya has launched a probe into his killing. For years, Saif Gaddafi was the second most powerful person in the country before his father was toppled in an uprising in 2011. It's been 48 hours since India and the US announced a trade deal. Since then, we've seen a cocktail of emotions, joy, confusion, fear, and anxiety. The government is trying hard to firefight, but the opposition is not backing down. They're capitalizing on the confusion around this deal. So tonight, we'll take a closer look. What more do we know about the India-US deal? What are the stakeholders saying, and what happens next? Government sources have clarified on 2 concerns. First is the $500 billion promise. President Donald Trump says India will buy American goods worth $500 billion. Turns out this will be over a period of 5 years, meaning around $100 billion of imports every year from the United States. This could include US airplanes, US energy, and US nuclear materials, basically big-ticket purchases, and yet the concerns remain. Let me pull up the numbers for you. US exports to India stand at $41 billion today. Indian exports to the United States stand at $87 billion. So Indian exports exceed US imports. In other words, India has a surplus of $46 billion. Now add this new clause. US exports will rise to $100 billion. So India's surplus could become a deficit of $13 billion. Of course, this is not inevitable, and I will tell you why I say this. As part of this deal, India faces a tariff rate of 18%, and 18% is better than most Asian exporters. So if we play our cards right, we can expand our exports too, maybe balance out the rise in imports. That's the first clarification on this trade deal. The second one is on agriculture. Donald Trump said that India promised to buy more farm goods, and this set off alarm bells. New Delhi has historically protected farmers from exports. Had that protection been removed? That was the concern. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal addressed this today. He made it clear that Indian farmers would be protected.
I wish to reiterate to this august House that India's core sensitivities in food and agriculture have been fully safeguarded. Equally, this partnership will unlock new opportunities for MSMEs, entrepreneurs, skilled workers, and industry.
We have some details from government sources. They suggest a middle path. India is said to have promised quota access for some products, things like cotton, chestnuts, onion, pulses and apple. Basically, a limited quantity will be imported at lower tariffs. At the same time, red lines have been drawn elsewhere. No genetically modified crops, no soybean meal, no poultry, no cereal and no corn. This is what multiple government sources are saying. But officially, there is no word. I must repeat that. New Delhi says the full details will be revealed only after the deal is signed. And when will that happen? Reports say it could happen within weeks. This lack of clarity has triggered a political war in India. Opposition parties say Prime Minister Modi conceded too much and that farmers will be hurt by this deal. Prime Minister Modi was slated to address the parliament today. He was expected to speak on the trade deal as well, but the proceedings got derailed. The opposition protested over a new unpublished book, a book written by India's former army chief, General M.M. Naravne. It details the events leading up to the 2020 clashes with China. The opposition wanted to discuss this book, this issue, but the government did not. So amid protests and disruptions, the parliament was adjourned for the day, meaning no speech by Prime Minister Modi today. Over in Washington, the White House is sticking to its initial claims. They say that India has promised to cut off Russian oil.
India committed to not only no longer purchasing Russian oil, but buying oil from the United States, also perhaps from Venezuela too, which we know will now have a direct benefit on the United States and the American people. And in addition to that, Prime Minister Modi committed to $500 billion of investments into the United States, including for transportation, for energy, and for agricultural products as well.
There is no clarity on this claim either. Russia says it has received no communication from India, plus New Delhi has not confirmed or denied it. But let's assume that this is true, that India did indeed agree to cut off Russian oil. How would this Russian oil cut-off work? Chances are it will happen over time. In fact, we have already seen this happen. In 2023 and 2024, Russia made up 40% of India's oil imports. But by December last year, that is 2025, Russia made up just 27% of India's oil imports. So oil imports from Russia had already been dropping. So what's the impact of this change? India gets Russian crude at a discount from Moscow, around $6 to $10 per barrel. That's the discount. Now, if you buy it from West Asia or the US, you will not get that discount, which means that India's oil prices could rise. And higher oil prices equal higher inflation. Having said that, there is a silver lining, and that is Venezuela. Trump wants India to buy Venezuela's heavy crude, and this crude is actually cheaper. So Venezuelan oil may cushion at least some of the impact. Plus, India has some wiggle room with inflation. Prices rose by around 1.3% in December. That was the inflation, 1.3%. That's well under the target of 2 to 6%. So there is no need to panic. And frankly, this is not a problem for today. Today's problem is the lack of clarity. If you don't reveal the details, the internet will fill the gaps. We're not saying publish the document. Of course, the terms have to be finalized and published then. But until then, Clarifications are necessary, and an information vacuum is not the answer. The trade deal has uplifted the mood of the markets. The Sensex and the Nifty are still rising. Today, they clocked their best one-day gains in 9 months. But not everyone is cheering. While the rest of the market soared, India's IT stocks collapsed. And the numbers are brutal. The Nifty IT index fell by over 6%. This index has India's top 10 IT companies, Infosys, TCS, HCL, Wipro, you name it, they were all in the red today. In fact, in the past couple of days, these stocks have suffered steady losses. According to one claim, over 2 lakh crores in investor wealth has been wiped out. So this is not a correction. India's IT stocks are facing a steady decline in value. And it's not just Indian stocks, by the way. Across the world, tech stocks are taking a beating, especially in the United States. Yesterday, a Goldman Sachs index of US software companies fell by 6%. It's their worst sell-off since April last year. April last year was when US President Donald Trump first announced his tariffs, and this one is the worst fall since then. The Nasdaq, too, plunged by almost 3%. This is a tech-heavy index, and yesterday it was in the red. And how much did investors lose? Some $300 billion in value. So why are tech stocks under pressure? Because of AI, artificial intelligence. A new wave of AI disruption is ripping through the tech industry. It is hitting companies that make conventional technology tools. Top players in the AI space are coming for their business. Recently, Anthropic released an update. Anthropic is the company behind platforms like Claude. And they've just released 2 new tools, Claude Cowork and Claude Code. These tools are more than chatbots. They don't just talk, they do the actual work. They can write, test, and fix production-grade code, meaning they can build applications which can be used in the real world. And that's not all. Here's what else they can do. They can review and draft legal documents, they can crunch data automatically, they can run compliance checks, and they can generate comprehensive reports out of it. Basically, these tools can perform complex tasks which typically involve multiple steps. They can perform these tasks with minimum inputs from a human. And they're not the only ones of their kind, the Claude upgrades. Rivals like OpenAI and Google are also developing similar tools. Plus, they have the resources to catch up. So it's only a matter of time before such tools become widely available. And these innovations have got early adopters quite excited. They're experimenting, they're sharing results on social media. Users are building simple apps from scratch. They're applying to jobs automatically. They're summarizing long legal documents within minutes. Videos show the potential of these tools, and they're exploding on the internet. This poses a challenge for India's IT sector. These tools threaten the business models of many companies, because this was the kind of work that Indian IT giants did. From entry-level coding to compliance, Indian firms did this for the world's leading companies. But now that business is at risk. AI tools are doing this work faster and better, and they are being adopted rapidly. Big tech companies have been cutting jobs. These layoffs have hit Indian techies. By the month of May last year, the world's biggest IT companies had cut over 100,000 jobs, and 20% of these were workers based in India. They were laid off. What's worse, it was not just coders who lost their jobs. Support staff, the people who looked after compliances, especially in departments like HR, were also asked to go, because the work they did is being automated. So Indians are losing jobs in this space, and Indian IT firms are losing revenue. Companies like TCS, Infosys, and HCL have issued warnings. New business is harder to come by, so these companies have cut their revenue outlook. It does not augur well. For decades, India's IT sector was the backroom for the world. It handled coding, processes, and compliances. But today, AI is learning how to do that. And I must add here that AI will not replace humans completely. What it's doing is chipping away at the core skills of India's IT sector. This is a sector worth over $280 billion. It was built on a simple model: produce high volume of output at a low cost. This model is now under threat. These companies need to evolve. They must adapt for the AI age. That has to be the long-term goal. Of course, in the short term, they must learn to survive the repeated waves of AI disruption. The countdown is on. Iran and the US are set to hold nuclear talks on Friday. But the lead-up is anything but normal. Drones are being shot down, tankers are being targeted, firepower is being assembled. It almost looks like a make-or-break moment. If you make a deal, you get peace. If you don't, you get war. Look at what happened yesterday. A US aircraft carrier was sailing in the Arabian Sea. This is the USS Abraham Lincoln. It was positioned around 800 kilometers off Iran's coast. The US military says this ship was targeted by an Iranian aircraft, a Shahed 139 suicide drone. This drone is often used for long-range surveillance. Experts say it can also carry missiles. So when this drone came close to the US aircraft carrier, the Americans decided to respond. Here's what Washington is saying. The Iranian drone continued to fly towards the ship despite de-escalatory measures taken by US forces operating in international waters. An F-35C fighter jet from Abraham Lincoln shot down the Iranian drone in self-defense and to protect the aircraft carrier and the personnel on board. So the US shot it down. Now, just to be clear, the Iranian drone did not attack the American warship. This was a precautionary strike by the United States. And what is Iran saying? Officially, the regime has not reacted, but Iranian media says the drone was on a surveillance mission. And it tells you how dangerous the situation is. You have two militaries locked and loaded. They have no trust in each other. They're both on high alert and they're both in close proximity. It's the perfect recipe for a misunderstanding, one that could spiral into something much bigger. And this drone attack was not an isolated incident. There was another flashpoint yesterday. The Iranian military chased an American oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz, a ship called the Stena Imperative. Iran says this tanker entered Iranian waters without permission, but the US claims it was a lawful voyage. Either way, it led to a standoff. Iran's Revolutionary Guards deployed 2 gunboats. They also flew a drone overhead. Reports say Iran threatened to board and seize this tanker. So the crew decided to speed up. But pretty soon, help arrived on the spot. Again, let me quote from the US military. This is what they said. Guided missile destroyer USS McFaul was operating in the area and immediately responded to the scene to escort Stena Imperative with defensive air support from the US Air Force. So a US destroyer guided the ship to safety, and overhead 2 US F-16s gave air cover to this tanker. That's 2 flashpoints in a couple of hours, both involving advanced weapons, air power, and warships. Like I said, this is a recipe for disaster. And these attacks have put the nuclear talks at risk. We told you about that yesterday. The US is sending Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Iran is sending its foreign minister. At first, the talks were slated to happen in Istanbul in Turkey. Turkey had also invited Arab countries to join the meeting. But then Tehran wanted a change of plans, so the meeting is now expected to be held in Oman. Plus, the Arab participation is in doubt. Despite these changes and attacks, President Donald Trump sounds hopeful. He believes that Iran wants to make a deal.
They are negotiating. They'd like to do something, and we'll see if something's going to be done. They had a chance to do something a while ago, and it didn't work out, and we did Midnight Hammer. I don't think they want that happening again, but they would like to negotiate. We are negotiating with them right now, yes.
And what about Iran? Well, they have two main objections. One, no discussions on their missile program and proxies. Trump wants to curb Iran's ballistic missiles, but that's a no-go zone for Tehran. So that's one condition. And second, Iran wants to retain its nuclear program. Now listen closely to this. Trump wants a complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. No plants, no centrifuges, and no enriched uranium. But this is not acceptable to Iran. They are okay with downgrading the enriched uranium, say from the current 60% to 20%, but a complete dismantling is not acceptable to Tehran.
The 60% enriched uranium can be downgraded to 20%, for example. It can be diluted. If you are worried about the 60%, it can be diluted, but there is a price to pay. You have to pay the price. There is no reason to transfer the highly enriched uranium abroad when the root cause of concerns can be removed.
That's the backdrop for the talks on Friday: attacks, suspicion, and threats, which is why West Asia is worried right now. They fear a US attack if a nuclear deal is not struck. And if that does happen, who can Iran count on? Well, there are two obvious candidates: China and Russia. Tonight, we'll focus on China. The Chinese already have a maritime presence near West Asia, specifically in the Arabian Sea. A Chinese spy vessel has reportedly been shadowing the USS Abraham Lincoln. It's called Dayang Yi Hao, meaning Ocean's Number 1. This ship has been sailing in the region since December. On paper, it's a research vessel. It can map the sea, the seabed, and maritime life. But in practice, it is used to spy on other vessels. In this case, it could be the Abraham Lincoln, the American ship. Does this signal China's willingness to help Iran? Well, politically, Beijing will support the regime in Tehran, but militarily, it's very unlikely. We saw that happen in June last year. When Israel and the US bombed Iran, China did not step in. They condemned from the sidelines. Then last December, China tried to send dual-use cargo to Iran, parts that can be used for both civilian and military purposes. But the US intercepted that cargo. They boarded the ship and they seized the parts. And surprisingly, China did not make a big issue out of it. It tells you the limits of Beijing's support. Yes, they would like to see the regime in Tehran survive, but they won't lift a finger to defend them. It was around 2:15 in the morning. It was a quiet housing society in Ghaziabad, near India's national capital. Three sisters stepped out of their bedroom. They were 12, 14, and 16 years old. One by one, they climbed onto a chair. They opened a window on the 9th floor, and they jumped. By the time help arrived, all three were gone. All that was left behind was a handwritten note. Two words that now haunt their parents. Sorry, Papa, that's what the note said. It's a chilling story, and it shakes you even more when you learn that it's linked to video games. These girls were addicted to gaming. They used to play games online, and when it got out of hand, their parents stopped them from playing. That's what the police have found. They say it was a case of severe gaming addiction. The sisters had stopped going to school. The eldest, who was 16 years old, was still enrolled in class 4. A 16-year-old in class 4. Their world had shrunk to a screen. They used to play a task-based online game. It's often called the Korean love game. Investigators are probing links. They have found no conclusive proof. But what the police have found so far is deeply unsettling. The girls had started calling themselves by Korean names. They wrote on their bedroom walls. They wrote phrases like, "I am very, very alone," and "make me a heart of broken." That's what they wrote. So did the game lead to such behavior? And what is this Korean love game? According to investigators, it is a dreadfully familiar story. In this game, a stranger reaches out to you, say through social media or through an app, and they claim to be Korean or foreign. They talk about friendship, then trust, and finally love. And once the hook is set, the tasks begin. It starts with small things at first, like waking up at night, late at night, staying awake all day, and cutting off your family. Slowly, the demands escalate, and then comes the fear. There are threats, emotional manipulation, and in some cases, even blackmail. Reports say the challenges typically last for 50 days, 50 days, and the final task, that is suicide. If this sounds familiar, it should. There was a blue whale challenge. It was also a task-based game. It set 50 tasks over 50 days. It pushed kids and teens towards self-harm. It led to numerous deaths across the world. In 2016, the founder was arrested. Then came the Momo challenge. It spread through WhatsApp. And each time, the pattern was identical. Strangers talk to you. They make you go into isolation. They tell you to take part in escalating dares, and then comes the final push. And each time, the world reacts after the children die. This new case is no different. But it should serve as a wake-up call, because here's the uncomfortable truth. India has 450 to 500 million gamers. 450 to 500 million. Around 100 million of them play every day. Globally, India is the second largest online gaming market after China. Almost 95% of these gamers play on mobile devices. It's a massive market. It's driven by children and teens. Indian adolescents are showing signs of gaming addiction. New studies show that nearly 20% of adolescents in India show such signs. That's way higher than global averages, 20% showing signs of addiction. And the addiction rates are higher among boys, 4 times higher than girls. 4 times higher. So what does this addiction look like? It looks like skipping school, reverse sleep cycles, aggression, isolation, anxiety, depression, loss of identity, and in extreme cases, suicide. In Karnataka alone, over 32 gaming-linked suicides were reported in the last 31 months. This is not entertainment anymore. This is a public health issue. And what has India done to tackle it? Last year, a new law was passed, the Promotion and Regulation of Online Gaming Act. It banned all real money online games. It introduced age verification. It imposed spending and time limits, restricted addictive advertising, and created a national online gaming commission. It said violations can lead to jail terms and massive fines. And this was a big step. But here's the problem. Most of these deadly games do not involve money. They involve manipulation. They slip through encrypted apps, social media DMs, and even foreign servers. Your laws can only stop platforms. They don't stop predators. So we need to do more. Let's look at what the other countries are doing. In China, for instance, minors can play for only 1 hour a day. On holidays, they get 3 hours. And facial recognition is mandatory. In South Korea, they've banned late-night gaming for kids to protect sleep. Belgium and the Netherlands have banned loot boxes, basically games with money. Australia has restricted in-game purchases for minors. So the global trend is quite clear. Child mental health comes before gaming profits. Which brings us back to India. Do we need stricter rules? Yes, we do. We need stricter policies on how to regulate gaming. But rules alone will not save our children. We need a holistic approach to tackle gaming addiction, like an early warning system in schools. Mandatory digital literacy for parents, accountability for platforms hosting harmful content, faster takedown mechanisms, and police units that are trained specifically for digital grooming cases. Also, we need conversation at home. India needs to treat gaming addiction like substance abuse with prevention, treatment, and empathy. And until that happens, this will not be the last story of its kind. Elon Musk is back in the news. Yesterday, we told you about how 2 of his companies are combining. Today, we are going to tell you about Grok, his AI chatbot, and X, his social media platform. Both of them are under intense scrutiny in several countries. Regulators say they have failed to stop illegal content. content like deepfakes and AI-generated sexualized images. In France, authorities have even raided X's offices. Elsewhere, some countries have moved to block Grok entirely. Musk calls this political, but regulators say it's about accountability. So what does this global crackdown mean for Elon Musk and his companies? Our next report tells you more.
Elon Musk is facing a reckoning, not from one government, but from many, and it is all converging on two fronts. X, Musk's social media platform, and Grok, the AI chatbot integrated on X. Both are now under scrutiny in multiple countries. The accusations? They failed to stop illegal content, non-consensual sexual images, deep fakes, and material involving children. From New Delhi to Paris to Brussels, regulators are taking action. In France, police recently raided X's offices in Paris. They are probing whether X failed to act against illegal content and misused user data.
The actions of Grok and X are disgusting.
Across the English Channel, Britain has opened its own investigation into Grok. The focus is on personal data. Officials are examining whether data was used to generate sexualized images without consent.
In Europe, no company will make money by violating our fundamental rights.
The European Union has also launched a formal inquiry. The EU is examining whether X has failed to assess and mitigate risks from Grok.
Today, the Commission is opening an investigation into Grok under the Digital Services Act because we believe that X may have breached the DSA. We have seen over the last weeks and months anti-Semitic content. We have seen non-consensual deepfakes of women, and we have seen child sexual abuse material.
Brussels is also scrutinizing X's algorithm. Beyond Europe, the pressure continues. India had issued notices to X last month. New Delhi said the platform failed to remove unlawful and sensitive content. In Southeast Asia, Indonesia and Malaysia temporarily blocked Grok. The restrictions followed concerns over AI-generated sexualized images. Indonesia later lifted the ban and restored access. But Malaysia's restriction, that still remains in place. For now, Grok has limited image generation on X. But here's the problem. A new report claims Grok is still generating sexualized images even after the restrictions. And now, the backlash is widening beyond just Grok and X. Some governments are asking whether social media itself has become too dangerous for children.
Spain will ban access to social media for minors.
Spain is the latest country to announce plans to block social media access for children under 16.
Today, our children are exposed to a space they were never meant to navigate alone. A space of addiction, abuse, pornography, manipulation, violence. We will no longer accept that. We will protect them from the digital Wild West.
Spain's Prime Minister didn't stop at policy. He named Grok directly and asked prosecutors to investigate possible legal violations. Musk has accused Spain's Prime Minister of authoritarianism, calling him a tyrant. The billionaire CEO claims all of this is a political attack. But Spain is not alone, as Greece is also considering a similar restriction on social media. So this isn't about politics, it is about compliance. Because as AI tools grow more powerful, regulation must keep pace. And while investigations are still ongoing, the calls for accountability are only getting louder.
Let's turn to Pakistan now, where the army is losing yet another war. this time at home. I'm talking about the situation in Balochistan. Over the weekend, Baloch militants launched a daring attack. They hit 48 targets across 14 cities. They killed dozens of civilians and security personnel. As always, the Pakistani army was caught napping. I guess when you snoop on politicians instead of militants, this is what happens. But Islamabad is not taking responsibility. Of course, they're not. They're shifting the blame. First, they blamed India for sponsoring the attacks. Now they're blaming geography. Listen to what Pakistan's defense minister said.
Balochistan constitutes over 40% of Pakistan geographically. To control it is much more difficult than a populated city, and it needs the deployment of massive forces. Our troops are deployed there and are in action against them, but they are physically handicapped by guarding and patrolling such a big area.
We haven't heard from Khwaja Asif for a while. We almost forgot how entertaining he was. You don't need guns when you have loose cannons like him. But jokes aside, this is a big admission. Khwaja Asif is basically saying that Balochistan is too big to guard and control and that the Pakistan army is handicapped in the province. And the geography checks out, of course. Balochistan makes up 40% of Pakistan's landmass. It is vast, unforgiving and rugged. But so are many other parts of the world. Pakistan's problem is not the size of Balochistan. Pakistan's problem is the situation in Balochistan. This province holds resources worth billions of dollars. It's got gold, gas, copper and coal. Yet, it is the poorest province in Pakistan. Do you know why? Because of stepchild treatment. Balochistan never wanted to be part of Pakistan. The largest of the Baloch kingdoms wanted to be independent. In 1947, Islamabad agreed to this demand, but months later, they forced Balochistan to accede. So politically, there is a lot of pent-up anger. The Baloch people resent the Punjabi domination. Add to that the economic exploitation. Pakistan has invited China to create an economic corridor in Balochistan. It is called CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And who benefits from this? The Chinese, not the Baloch locals. This is the root cause of the tensions in Balochistan, not the size, not the terrain, but this. And I must say, Supreme Commander Asim Munir must be fuming at Khwaja Asif, because he basically said that Munir is unable to control Balochistan and that his army is handicapped. I hope Khwaja Asif sleeps with one eye open, because Munir's wrath is legendary. What he cannot do on the battlefield, he does to politicians. Just ask Imran Khan. And Balochistan is not Munir's only problem. The so-called field marshal is being mocked online by Pakistani citizens. Why? Because of the India-US trade deal. You see, Munir has invested a lot in his ties with Donald Trump. He signed crypto deals with Trump's family firm. He hired lobbyists for thousands of dollars. He promised rare earths and mining rights to the Americans. And yet, Pakistan got 19% tariffs from the United States. Meanwhile, despite all the tensions, India got 18%. And that's something that the internet has pointed out. I don't get the outrage. Tariffs don't apply to bailouts and loans, so what exactly is Pakistan worried about? Their biggest exports are beggars to Saudi Arabia. But then again, this is classic Pakistan. They always measure themselves against India. Whether it's tariffs or cricket or GDP, it's always about competing. Though in reality, there is no competition. This misplaced priority is why Balochistan is burning. Just think about it. The army chief is busy attending the World Economic Forum in Davos. He's the only army chief there. He's meeting world leaders and he's seeking investment. So naturally, security will be compromised. The truth is, Pakistan's military is overstretched. To the north, they face a hostile Afghan Taliban. To the west, there is insurgency in Balochistan. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, there is a Pakistani Taliban threat, and to the east, they have a perceived Indian threat. One army cannot handle all of this, certainly not with a distracted chief and a broken economy. The sooner Pakistan realizes this, the better. Our next story is about a shift in West Asia. Two countries that were once at loggerheads are now working together. I'm talking about Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is in Riyadh. Just a few years ago, a visit like this would have been hard to imagine because Turkey and Saudi Arabia were competing for influence in the region and in the Muslim world. They backed opposite sides in various conflicts and they had little diplomatic contact. And with the killing of Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi in Turkey, ties hit rock bottom. They've come a long way since. Today, major investment deals are being signed and economic cooperation is taking center stage. So what drove this turnaround and what does this mean for the region? Our next report explains.
For years, Turkey and Saudi Arabia barely spoke. Trust collapsed after the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul in 2018. Relations froze, diplomacy took a back seat, and a rivalry emerged. But now, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is back in Saudi Arabia, and it signals that something has shifted. This trip is not about gestures, it is about necessity. Turkey's economy needs investment, and Saudi Arabia, they want reliable partners. Both face an unstable region, and both are recalculating old rivalries. Erdogan met Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. The talks were broad, but the priorities were clear. On trade, the ambition is explicit. Both sides want bilateral trade to hit $10 billion in the short term. The long-term target is about $30 billion. Currently, trade has already crossed $8.6 billion. That momentum matters. Energy was the headline deal. Saudi Arabia will invest $2 billion in renewable energy projects in Turkey. 2 major solar plants will be built, and together they will generate 2,000 megawatts of electricity, enough to power more than 2 million homes. Saudi-backed solar and wind projects could eventually reach 5,000 megawatts. Turkish officials call this one of the biggest foreign investments in the energy sector. While energy was the headline, defense cooperation too took center stage. Both sides announced joint procurement and production of equipment. Officials say defense ties are accelerating.
Both sides emphasize the importance of enhancing existing security cooperation and coordination on issues of common interest, including combating crime in all its forms, countering extremism and terrorism and their financing, exchanging expertise and training, and strengthening cooperation in the field of cybersecurity.
But the real weight of this visit wasn't in the economic contracts, it was in the geopolitical discussions. Turkey and Saudi Arabia aligned on Gaza. They spoke about reconstruction and discussed how to work together beyond their borders.
Both sides reaffirmed their commitment to continued coordination and intensified efforts to maintain international peace and security.
Take Somalia, for example. Both leaders reaffirmed support for Somalia's sovereignty. They rejected the recognition of Somaliland. Somaliland declared independence in 1991. It has functioned as a self-governing region for decades, but it has never been internationally recognized. Israel became the first country to recognize it in December 2025. But Somalia still considers it a part of its territory. Ankara and Riyadh warned that recognizing Somaliland would fuel instability. Yemen was also on the agenda. Both sides backed the internationally recognized government. On Sudan, both called for unity. There had been speculation that Turkey might join a Saudi-Pakistan defense pact, but reports suggest Ankara has decided otherwise. Nevertheless, the former rivals are choosing pragmatism. Economics is driving diplomacy. And by the end of Erdogan's visit, the message was unmistakable. This was not a thaw, it was a reset.
Our next story is about fighter jets, and it features a company called HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. It's India's main manufacturer of defense aircraft, and for the first time, it is out of the race. The race to build India's fifth generation fighter. Reports say that HAL is officially out of the picture, and it's a big deal because this has never happened before. HAL was central to the making of defense aircraft in India, but it won't get the next big project. A project worth 15,000 crores. And apparently, HAL did not meet the criteria. The company itself has issued a statement now. It says it has received no such communication, but reports say Indian officials have zeroed in on 3 players. All of them are private companies, and one of the 3 will be given the project. It's called the AMCA, Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, more commonly called a 5th generation fighter jet. That's what they're looking to build. This is India's most ambitious military aviation program. The goal is to build a modern-day fighting machine with features like stealth and AI, a plane which can fly with unmanned aircraft and which can be loaded with long-range targeting systems. The plane will become the mainstay of the Indian Air Force in the 2030s. In the first phase, India will order 120 of these jets. So this is a very significant project where timing is of the essence. And timing, as you may know, is not the strong suit of HAL. They've always let the Indian Air Force down. The HAL has a massive order book. They have over 2 trillion rupees worth of wares to deliver, and their record has been patchy. Let me give you some examples, in fact. Last month, HAL said that 5 jets are ready for induction. These are the much-awaited Tejas Mk-1A jets. But reports say the deliveries have been delayed yet again. The reason? Pending certification and missing operational clearances. The Tejas is a 48,000 crore rupee project. It was supposed to replace India's aging MiG-21 jets. The contract was signed in 2021. The deliveries were expected in 3 years. But 5 years later, HAL has not delivered a single aircraft. And it's not just fighter jets. HAL is also struggling with engine development. A government review has flagged serious delays. The company has been working on 2 types of engines, one for jet trainers and another for helicopters. The program was sanctioned in 2018. 8 years later, it is still not complete. The government review blames delays in procurement and other gaps. And these are basic hurdles which HAL has failed to overcome. Last year, they were at the receiving end of a rare public rebuke. The criticism came from India's Air Force Chief himself, that is Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh. He publicly slammed HAL. Listen to this.
Timelines is a big issue. Not a single project that I can think of has been completed on time. So this is something where we have to look at. Why should we promise something which cannot be achieved? While signing the contract itself, some of the times we are sure that it is not going to come up. But we just signed the contract.
This was in May last year. Then in November, another shock came, another setback. A Tejas fighter jet crashed at the Dubai Air Show. The pilot did not survive. This was an older model. HAL is yet to explain what happened here. And all of this is happening at a critical time. India needs more fighter squadrons. The Air Force currently has 29 active squadrons. It needs 42.5. One squadron has 18 jets. So it's a total shortfall of about 200 jets. And that is massive. Since HAL is failing to deliver, the private sector is being asked to step up. The Air Force Chief himself advocated for this last year. That, of course, does not mean that HAL is being replaced. This is about bringing in more players to meet India's pressing needs. HAL is still valuable, but it cannot be the only option for India's forces. They need multiple suppliers. And if the reports of them being dropped from the AMCA project are true, it should serve as a wake-up call for HAL. They have the infrastructure, they have the talent, more importantly, they have the legacy. But timelines and deliveries matter. And sometimes you need good competition to push you to do better. Our next story is about the cryptocurrency market. It has seen a sharp sell-off over the past few days. Prices of major cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum have fallen steeply. The result is this: the crypto market has seen a massive wipeout in value We are talking about some $500 billion. That is the value that has been wiped off the market in less than a week. Investors are panic selling, and the confidence that once drove prices up is gone. So what triggered this market rout, and what does this mean for the cryptocurrency market? Here's a report.
The crypto market is crashing. Confidence is slipping, prices are plunging, and nearly $500 billion has been erased in real time. In less than a week, around $467.6 billion has been wiped off the global cryptocurrency market, and Bitcoin is leading the carnage. The world's largest cryptocurrency has fallen to below $73,000. That is its lowest level since early November 2024. That was the period just before President Donald Trump's re-election. Back then, expectations were high. Trump had promised crypto-friendly policies and signaled a lighter regulatory approach. Bitcoin surged, and by October 2025, it was trading above $126,000. Now that optimism is evaporating. Bitcoin is down 13% so far this year. It has lost 39% from its peak in October. Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency, has fallen sharply too. So why is this happening? The first trigger is global risk. Tensions between the United States and Iran are rising. Investors are nervous. In uncertain times, money usually moves to safety. Gold and silver are classic refuges. Many thought Bitcoin would be treated the same way, but it didn't. Gold has recovered after recording some losses, but Bitcoin kept falling. It fell alongside stocks. That tells us something important. Bitcoin is being treated like a risky investment, not a safe one. That's a problem for people who believed Bitcoin was digital gold. But fear wasn't the only issue. There was also panic selling. On January 30th, more than $2.5 billion worth of Bitcoin positions were forcibly sold in a single day. Here's what that means. Many investors had borrowed money to buy Bitcoin. When prices fell, they were forced to sell. That selling pushed prices even lower, and that triggered more forced selling. It became a cycle. At the same time, bigger economic problems are also adding pressure. There are trade tensions between countries, worries about the job market, and uncertainty about what the US Federal Reserve will do next. Donald Trump's choice to lead the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh, has made investors more nervous. Warsh is seen as more hawkish than markets expected. Crypto does well when borrowing is cheap. Right now, it's not. Some prominent investors are now speaking out. They say Bitcoin has failed the test. They believed Bitcoin would act as protection during stress. Instead, it fell apart. So what happens next? No one knows for sure. Investors are still nervous. Some analysts think prices could stabilize if they don't fall much lower. Others say without clearer signs that things are improving, confidence won't come back quickly. But one thing is clear. This rout is not just about crypto. It is about fear, leverage, and about how risk behaves when certainty disappears. For now, the sell-off is still unfolding, and crypto investors are learning a hard lesson. When things get tough, not everything holds its value.
For our last story, it's time for some honesty, so be honest. How many of you are watching this show with full concentration? And how many of you are also scrolling on Instagram, replying to WhatsApp, or checking Amazon prices? And if you're in the second category, you're not alone, and your behavior has a name. It is called second screen viewing. And it's so widespread, it is changing a lot of things, like how our shows are written, how actors perform in films and shows, and more importantly, how stories are told. In fact, this behavior is changing modern entertainment in more ways than one. So let's start with the term, second screen viewing. It means watching TV while using another device at the same time, aka using a second device, a second screen. In most cases, it's your phone. So TV becomes the background and your attention is divided. To be fair, this is not how television was designed to work. Earlier, you planned what you watched. You sat down at a fixed time, you paid attention, or you missed the episode. And if you missed something, you had to wait for a rerun. But streaming and YouTube have changed that. Now you can watch anything at any time, and if you miss something, you can pause, you can rewind, and if you still don't get it, you can just move on because there's always another show. So attention has become optional. And entertainment platforms are adjusting to this. The television is already called the idiot box. And now shows and news are getting dumber by the day, and I mean literally. Characters in TV shows do not just do things anymore, they announce them. Say some character is worried about a plan failing. So they can just look worried. But that's not what they do. They say it. They say, I'm scared because this plan could fail. Basically, the subtext is dead. You only get summaries now. And if you thought this was bad, well, there's more. Important plot points are repeated again and again and again, not because the viewers are stupid, but because they were looking at their phones the first 3 times. So you have to repeat things to make them understand. And fans have noticed this. They noticed it in the new season of Stranger Things. They said it was like actors were narrating their emotions. Also, this is not the first time it's happened. Netflix has been accused of dumbing down shows before, even by Hollywood actors. Take Matt Damon, for example. He says Netflix encourages writers to reiterate the plot 3 or 4 times. Why? Because people are on their phones. Netflix is yet to comment on this officially. Then you have YouTube. YouTube is not trying to fight distraction. Instead, it is monetizing distraction. If you buy YouTube Premium, it lets you play videos in the background. It allows you to scroll other apps. So you can be on Instagram, and you can watch a YouTube video on the same phone at the same time. So same problem, but a different business model. And we cannot just blame streaming platforms here. News is following the same path. Look at modern news content. There are bigger fonts, fewer words, repeated headlines, fast-moving graphics, even emotional cues are spelled out. This is why you should be angry, or this should make your blood boil. Why? Because news organizations know that you're scrolling. You're only half listening. You will leave in 3 seconds. So instead of complexity, they deliver 2 things, sensationalism and repetition. The goal is no longer understanding, the goal is retention, just like streaming. So is this a good thing or bad? Honestly, it's not evil. Sometimes you may want comfort TV, sometimes you're tired, sometimes background noise helps, and that is fine. But when every show assumes that you're not paying attention, storytelling suffers. Dialogue becomes clunky, characters feel flat, news feels too simplistic, and viewers who do want to engage feel insulted. Soon it becomes a loop. People scroll because shows are shallow. Shows get shallower because people scroll, and in the end, everyone loses. Now, this is not the end of good TV, at least not yet, but it's definitely a fork in the road. Think about it. Are you worried about AI slop flooding the internet? Well, bad news. The White House just made it a government program. It started with Donald Trump as a literal king on a fake Time magazine cover, and then it spiraled. Trump with a penguin, Trump as a Jedi, Trump basically as every main character ever invented. If it exists, AI has put Trump in it. Take a look.
Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, bing. I am the chosen one. Okay.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. A Kiev high-rise burns as Ukraine reports over 500 drone and missile attacks overnight. Florida iguanas fall from trees after temperatures drop, with a Florida man making a blanket out of them. And a sled dog in Greenland steals a $700 camera and ends up filming the heist. Finally, we are taking you back in history on this day in 2004. Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook. It began as a platform to connect Harvard students. By the next day, over 1,000 people had registered. Facebook is now one of the biggest social media platforms in the world with over 3 billion monthly active users. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Back up, guys. Back up. Back up.
The world doesn't fit in boxes, so why should your news? From battlefields to negotiation tables, from internet outrage to real-world injustice. The conversations everyone is having and the ones they're avoiding. It's the same show, but this new year, Firstpost America gets a new look. I'm Kerry Johnston, and this is Firstpost America.